Good afternoon. So, I often think of myself as the unlikely hotelier. I came into this industry a little bit by accident. I never went to hotel school. I never studied computer engineering either, but I run a technology company that sells to hotels all over the world. So, Manav and his team thought I'm somewhat qualified to talk about Hospitality 2030. But before I get there, I'm going to share with you a little journey which I think shapes my view of what's going to happen in this industry. When I started Knowcross, my first 6 years or 7 years were very painful. And they were painful not because of the usual entrepreneur pains that every entrepreneur goes through, but they were painful because I think hoteliers simply didn't think that technology was their business. So for them, they were very grudging acceptors, if you will, of technology. The PMS, their technology world started and ended with the PMS. Everything apart from that was technology, was the air conditioning system, the ovens, and the fridges. And trying to sell into that mindset was extremely difficult. In the last 4 or 5 years, with the proliferation of technology in the palm of our hands, our telephones, our mobile phones, I think that's starting to change. The next generation of managers, that's definitely starting to change. So I really feel that we would do well if we paid attention to technology. We paid attention to the disruptions as well as the opportunities that come with technology. And I think those of us who actually track it will do very well in the future. So when we think about the future, all of us who grew up when I grew up, this is what we thought about. We thought about Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. We thought about flying cars. Some of you may remember the TV show Knight Rider. There was Kit talking. 15 years ago, Minority Report, the Bureau of Future Crime, Terminator, killer automatons changing the world. This kind of science fiction makes us sometimes think that the future is very far away, but it's not that far away. In fact, let's think about it. We live in the future of 2006. So, Mariah Carey won a Grammy in 2006. Lage Raho Munna Bhai was the movie that we all loved in 2006. And Crash, which I don't think was that popular outside the United States, was a movie that won all the Oscars that year, right? This is what a hotel website looked in 2006. Recognize it? I doubt if any of us would languish on that page for even a second if that popped up in front of us today. This is what Booking.com looked like in 2006. Does anybody know what the market cap of Booking.com is? As of this morning, and there's been a little bit of correction in the markets the last few days, it was about $93 billion. $93 billion. Do you know that in 2005, Priceline bought Booking.com, any guesses? For $135 million. All cash, 100%. Okay? This is what Facebook looked like back then. The value then, $500 million. The value today, well, it was 538 when this slide was made a week ago. I think it's like 450 now, but I'm pretty sure it's going to bounce back. But you get an idea of what's happened, how much the world has changed. Who could have predicted back then that Facebook is going to be on our phones and people are going to be looking at it 20, 30, 40 times a day or nonstop? By the way, WhatsApp didn't exist in 2006. How many of you can imagine your lives without WhatsApp today? iTunes was launched. The value of Apple, the entire company, was $43 billion. It's $900 billion today. Netflix, as we know it, didn't exist in 2006. Netflix was a DVD distribution business. That's what it was about. And it was worth $1 billion. We all know what that's worth today. We all consume Netflix content, even here in India. It's worth $130 billion today. Google, already starting to be the window to the world for all of us on our desktops, on our computers, was $100 billion. It's $800 billion today, right? So, and then look at Amazon, $10 billion to $700 billion today. Collectively, these 5 companies have grown market cap by $3 trillion in 12 years. A lot of us didn't even know these names in 2006, or had just heard of them, but we didn't quite understand what impact they're going to have on our daily lives. Imagine living without one of these technologies today. Imagine living without Android phones or Apple phones. Can you even imagine a world like that? 64 million smartphones, not BlackBerries, part of that was BlackBerries, shipped in 2006. 1.6 billion are expected to ship this year. That pretty much means roughly 22% of people on the planet will buy a smartphone this year. That's an astounding number. That includes all continents, every person on the planet, every man, woman, and child. I think the point is, the signs of the future are already here. We just have to look around us. Sorry, just going to go back. We just have to look around us. I'm going to share something with you which I feel very strongly sometimes. The OTA industry didn't just creep up on you guys. It was there. It was happening in front of everybody's eyes, but nobody took their head out of the sand. Nobody saw what was going on. Expedia was founded by 2 guys from Microsoft who knew squat about the hotel industry. Zippo. They figured it out. And they thought it would be more convenient for people to click and book online than the traditional way of using a travel agent or walking into a shop to book hotels. And Expedia grew. In the downturn of the market between 2001 and 2003, Expedia gained a lot of momentum. None of the linking technologies were in place there. It all used to work by fax and phone at the back end. But for the consumer, the experience had completely transformed. This was happening in front of everybody in the hotel industry, but nobody was looking. Nobody wanted to take their head out of the sand and say, oh my God, something's going to change here. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, even now, if we look around, the signs of change are everywhere. So let's look at a few of them. The Internet of Things, we've all heard about it. People talk about it. People like me stand up on stage and talk about it. There are plenty of magazine articles about it. But it's going to actually change. So next time you build a hotel, ask your technology provider to future-proof it, because this stuff is coming. There are already many companies that are providing stuff that is going to be compatible with networks that will allow systems in your hotel to communicate directly. It is possible for a piece of equipment to tell somebody somewhere that it's out of order. Robots. We've got clients in various parts of the world today who've already started using robots for cleaning. Not rooms yet, but public areas, for sure. There are a number of hotels that are experimenting with early robotic technologies for delivery. Nobody says, I'm not going to come. They don't say, I'm not going to come to work. They don't say, my mother is ill, or my father is ill, or my child is unwell, or I have to take him to school. They work 24/7, and they deliver things pretty quickly. Okay? I went to the new Yotel in Singapore a few months ago. They've got 2 robots. It's a little bit of an experiment, but it works. These robots come, you can talk to them, they can give you stuff, they can deliver stuff, they can deliver amenities to the room. It's pretty amazing. We all read the newspapers. We all hear about Tesla. We all hear about driverless cars. We all also hear that completely driverless lanes, highways will be created. This is going to happen. All the technology that it takes for this to happen is already in place. It's already here. It's not going to take very long for this technology to become completely standard. Look how long it took for all of us to get addicted to WhatsApp. It's not going to be very long before people are going to realize that it's going to be far more efficient to take one of these automatic cars, far safer, by the way, as well, okay, and be driven in one of these, of course, to your hotel, but also everywhere else. This is my favorite. Everybody in the world got to know about Bitcoin in the last 7, 8 months because every day the newspaper would say that the price has gone up. Bitcoin started in 2009. When it began, its value was a fraction of a cent. It was 0.0018 was the value, or even lower. The first recorded transaction of Bitcoin took place at 0.3 of a cent. If you look at the history of Bitcoin, and unfortunately I wasn't able to do this on the graph, there's actually been 4 phases of Bitcoin growth. In every phase, the price has gone up by thousands of %, and then it's come down to about half its value, plateaued, and then the next phase has begun from that plateau and gone up again. So imagine if you picked up Bitcoin at a fraction of a dollar, or you picked it up at a few bucks, or you picked it up at a few $100. You would have been in the money any which way. The point is, if we look at the currency world that we live in today, it's not that old. It's very hard for us to imagine that it's going to change, but do you know that the gold standard, which was established about 80 years ago, is only 80 years old? And the gold standard was kicked out of the window by Nixon in 1970, which means now, if the government printed money, they didn't have the same amount of gold lying in their vaults anymore. So from 1970 onwards, we've lived in a paradigm where governments can print any amount of money that they want. The only reason you and I exchange a dollar or a rupee is the confidence that you can then pass it on to somebody else, and he or she too will accept it. This momentum is starting to build around Bitcoin and a few other cryptocurrencies. It's only a matter of time before these currencies become the way that we transact with each other. I can't say which one is going to be the dominant currency. There'll probably be a few of them. They'll all have their value. They'll all be tradable. But it is going to happen. And there's one very big reason it's going to happen is because it takes control away from governments and other people trying to regulate it. And it also is a universal currency. It's a universal medium of exchange. So if our current paradigm is only 45 years old since the day the gold standard was removed, it's not that difficult to imagine that in the next 12 years we're going to have a new paradigm. So in 2030, you'll be accepting all sorts of payments. But as soon as there is a mechanism for you to accept cryptocurrency payments in the next few years, I'd say start taking some and storing it away. I would bet anything that that money is going to multiply a lot faster than putting it in the bank. What is a hotel? Is it a place to sleep for the night? Or is it something more than that? A lot of you would be familiar with WeWork. I don't know how many of you know, but WeWork has already created a couple of experimental concepts called We Live. And the whole concept of sharing not just your office space, not just your living space, but also your office space, and bringing those two together is now being embraced by other brands and other companies that are experimenting with this concept. So in Amsterdam, there's something called Zoku, which has opened up. I was with a customer in Hong Kong a few weeks ago who's coming out with a new concept, very similar concept where they're combining shared workspaces with shared living spaces. There's a customer of ours in London, very entrepreneurial company, doing something very similar and opening the first one in London. This is going to proliferate. We already have WeWork here in India, and I hear talk of some hoteliers, some more entrepreneurial hoteliers talking about this. But, you know, I don't think if you do one of these, you'll fail. You'll probably be an early mover. You'll probably capture a share of a growing market. And you've got to understand that the next generation is different. The next generation wants to live in shared spaces. And by the way, the economics of these shared spaces work very, very well indeed. I got to share a little story with you. There's a hotel in London called the Hoxton. The lobby area of any Hoxton is somewhere between a coffee shop and a nightclub in terms of its ambient lighting and its atmosphere. People walk in at 7 in the morning, and a little bit like, are there any Germans in the room? A little bit like Germans at a resort, bagging beach beds with their towels. That's exactly what they do with the sofa seats at the Hoxton, and they quickly grab their sofa seats. They probably pay £2 for a coffee, and they sit there all day because it's got the fastest Wi-Fi in the city. But that area makes so much money for them because while there are a few people who will buy only one coffee, the rest of the traffic keeps coming in and out of the lobby, and it's this amazing workspace that gets created with amazing Wi-Fi. You can walk up to the bar and order a drink, you can grab a coffee, you can order a meal. There are different areas in the same floor plate. Open kitchen, and it's not very expensive. But it works. Their rooms are between 12 square meters and 18 square meters only. And they yield them like anything. They run an occupancy of over 95%. And normally they're sold out on weeknights. So, food for thought. Some of you may remember this movie. Joaquin Phoenix plays the role of someone who falls in love with the computer. The movie is called Her, a few years old. Today, this same technology is real. Those of you who have Google Home, who have an Alexa device, or who talk to Siri or Cortana on your mobile devices or your computers know this already. So in our homes, in our workspaces, we have devices that are constantly listening to us. If anybody over here believes that when their phone is lying next to them, it's not listening, please wake up. It's listening to you all the time. Google knows every time you argue with your spouse. Google also knows every time you're whispering something to your girlfriend. That's the reality. That's the world that we live in. And this technology, if you think about it, has so many uses. Why should you have an operator in a hotel? Most of the things that I want in a hotel as a guest, it's very easy to just talk to a device like this and order it. And there's already the early products based on this technology that are out there. They're already available. You can order a face recognition door lock on Amazon today. It's available. And while the rest of the industry is right now talking about mobile phone, being able to own a door lock, the world's moved on. The problem is that the ecosystem a little bit in the hotels today has its own constraints. And because nobody's willing to break out of that ecosystem and adopt something new, these technologies get held back. But if our technology at home is already so far ahead of the hotels, then of course we've got to catch up. If I can walk into my house today with face recognition locks, why do I want to carry this key around all the time? And if I lose it, I have to go down 5 flights or go down the elevator, get a new key, etc. Privacy is a big issue around the world. And I think one of the things that's going to change is I think that these statutory regulations, new laws, will continue to restrict how much information we can keep on our guests. So I think there's going to be a flip. Guests, i.e. us, are going to control our own information, and we will give that information, much like we give our credit card and put in our key today, our PIN code today, much like that, we will share our information with hotels, and it will be shared on a temporary basis, on a transactional basis, and then the hotel will not have the right to store that information. Something very similar is going to happen in this area. Distribution will continue to get disrupted. I don't know how many of you know this. Paytm says that it's going to jump into selling hotel rooms. This morning, those of you who saw the news saw that Make My Trip on Flipkart. Flipkart's going to sell Make My Trip inventory on Flipkart. That's massive customer channel that's being opened up. Just imagine that. Marriott, about a year ago, partnered with Alibaba to distribute and get Chinese customers, many more Chinese customers as the outbound market from China into Marriott hotels, and it's working. It's highly, highly successful. So there'll be plenty of channels through which you will have to distribute. And if we look at the alternative accommodation market, the private accommodation market, it is going to grow. You can look at any number of estimates on various articles, various experts, various forecasters. Airbnb is going to be larger than any hotel company in the next 10 years. There is no doubt that that's going to happen. I think this guy is dead. He doesn't, I think for most of you, he may already be dead. Some of you may hang on to these teams for legacy purposes. Maybe in some specific markets, they still have a role. But honestly, you'd be better off getting your technology, digital marketing, et cetera, organized and doing much more online to get guests in directly than spending time or spending a lot of money on direct sales teams. This is a favorite concept of mine, and I've been working on this concept for a few years. And I often ask myself the question, if I go back to the same hotel more than once, why is it that I have to book that hotel through an OTA? Why are your websites, your apps, or any other booking channel that you have not as simple as that of an OTA? Why do you make it so complex? And why do you not recognize the fact that I'm coming back to your hotel? You're willing to give 30% to the OTA, but you're not willing to give me even 5% if I book directly. And if I'm only staying in the room for 12 hours, but I'm going to spend a few $100s in your restaurant, why is it that you don't recognize that? The casino guys give free rooms to people who spend more than a few $1,000s at the casino. In fact, some of those guys have it right. They really know what they're doing as far as bringing back the gamblers is concerned. There's things to learn from there. It's very easy for us to look at the data that we have on our repeat customers and give them a very simple way to be able to call. Just set up a hotline saying, if you ever want to come back to our hotel, click this number. And we will give you an offer that's only for you. It's not available on the website. It's not available on an OTA. By 2030, there are going to be 120 million plus Chinese customers traveling out of China every year. Tourists. I was in Macau last weekend, having some meetings. That whole market is driven by Chinese travelers. The only thing they all wanted to know was, can our apps communicate on WeChat so that they can have a channel of communication with the Chinese guests? And WeChat gives you a lot of capabilities and tools to actually build that direct communication with your guests. That's the only thing they were interested in. How many of you are targeting Chinese customers? How many of you have even tracked how many Chinese visitors come to India? How many of you have done anything to service those visitors? They are unique. They don't work the same as the Western visitor. They do have some unique requirements. Has anybody done anything to cater to them? It's a niche market. It is totally possible to build a business in certain cities on the back of just this one customer segment. Indian tourists. We all know the challenges that inbound tourism has in India. But has anybody seen the opportunities that outbound provides? I often ask a lot of you when we meet in private, I often ask you, why is it that you're hung up on India? It's actually the worst market in the world by some metrics to actually set up a hotel in. But the Indian traveler is traveling everywhere. And when Gujaratis travel in groups, or when first-time travelers from second and third-tier cities go in groups, they want to be in their comfort zone. Why wouldn't you build a hotel in some of their destinations? Companies like Club Med got built because French travelers wanted to travel to exotic destinations around the world. TUI got built because German middle-class travelers wanted to take long vacations once a year. There are so many chains that got built, all-inclusive resorts, full packages, including flights, and you go to the destination and they control your entire experience, that got built because their home market travelers allowed them to build that. Why don't we think of that as an opportunity? It's obvious. There are going to be 100 million Indian tourists. You can do any math you want. By 2030, that's the size of the outbound market. There's an opportunity to capitalize on it. So I'm going to spend my last few minutes talking about a concept which I think is going to happen. The building blocks for it are already in place. A lot of you may or may not know what blockchain does. What blockchain is think of it as an open register. So nobody can cheat, right? It's like me making accounting entries on a book, but in a way that everybody can read what that entry is, and you make a copy of that. So even if there's a discrepancy, if 9 out of 10 copies say the same thing, that's going to be the truth. This technology is going to enable disruption. So if you think about it, what you're selling is a particular room for a particular night. That's your unit of sale. That unit, much like an oil barrel, can be bought and sold. So I could sell room 401 in this hotel for the 27th of May to a trader. That trader can sell it to other traders, who can sell it to another trader, who can sell it to another trader. And on the day before, by a certain cutoff time, a name of a guest will get attached to that booking. Theoretically, every hotel room night is a tradable unit. And this tradable unit can be bought, sold. You can have options and futures around these units, and an entire market can be created, which will be much more efficient than the way we currently distribute. It's going to change a few things for sure. Sorry. There'll be a massive amount of efficiency. No one player will dominate. What it's also going to allow you to do, if you think about it, is you can sell your room nights and collect the money up front. Of course, that means if the price is going to go up, you miss out. But it also means you get the money today and you can invest that money. It changes the way you finance projects. It changes the way you finance renovations. It changes a lot of things. It makes for efficient markets. And there's no reason this can't happen. This happens with pork chops. It happens with gold. It happens with oil. It happens with stock. It happens with bonds. It already happens in every other market. This is the only market in which it's not happening. But some of the enabling technologies that will allow it to happen are now there. I think it's only a matter of time that this is going to happen. So the point is, the signs are all around us. We've got to look at them. Somebody said this once. The Americans have the need for telephone, but we don't. We have plenty of messenger boys. It was the guy who ran the British Post Office in 1876. He didn't think telephones had any market. There's a guy who said, I think there is a world market for 5 computers. If I tell you who that guy is, you'll be shocked. It was the chairman of IBM in 1943. So the point is, ignore the signs at your peril. They're all around you. Get up, be the change. Please don't put your head in the sand like you did when Expedia and the OTAs took over your business. Look up. There's a lot of opportunity, and you can own the opportunity this time. Thank you. So I think I've got a few minutes for questions, if anybody has questions. Sure, go ahead. I think there's a mic coming there.
Good afternoon. My name is Surendra Kumar Sharma. Very inspiring, very futuristic. I got a question, which I'm experiencing this. I'm doing a very small property in Cornwall in Newquay. That's basically a wellness resort. Now, I am building this platform on crowdfunding basis. And I want to use blockchain as back technology. Do you really see a potential in this, or I'm really beating around the bush?
No, I don't think you're beating around the bush, but I don't know how many experts on blockchain are actually available to help you right now. I think those things are coming together very quickly. It's still moving. Not all the building blocks are in place. But in the next 18 to 24 months, for sure, they'll be in place. I don't think you'll find that many blockchain experts just yet to help you with something. So I would say perhaps you'd be better off waiting a year or two to build that platform on blockchain. But the underlying technologies are undergoing so much organization right now that they'll be real and they'll be used in a lot of tech development after a few years. It's not there yet, though. It's definitely coming. Any other questions? I hope I didn't put you guys to sleep. Yes, sir. So can we have the mic here? थोड़ा आगे.
The name is Harish Advani. I'm from Caravella Beach Resort. And, you know, I appreciate the thought process. The question is, how do you keep ahead of the technology? What is the fora, or what is the forum that you have to keep, you know, looking at to see what are the new developments that are taking place over a period of time, so one can adapt to it? And how does one get a hold of the people who are supposedly, quote unquote, the experts, as and when they develop the technology?
Sure, I think it's a very good question. And I think as a small hotelier with not perhaps a large chain, it's a little bit more challenging. I think like in all industries, there are disruptors that are around. You know, the hotel industry has lived in the paradigm where the PMS is the anchor of all technology in the hotel. That's changing already, right? So a lot of us, a lot of hoteliers are on legacy technologies, legacy PMSs that have, I think, outlived their time. And there's a whole new breed of PMSs that are coming up that are open architecture, that are cloud-based, much cheaper, and do perhaps less, but the reality is you don't use 80% of the functions in your PMS already, right? You only use a core set of features, right? So I'd say, look, today we live in a world where information is abundant. There are online forums, there are fantastic websites that track technology, and there are plenty of vendors out there, and I think it's only a matter of time before a lot of those vendors will approach you as well. The point is, I think, to allow yourself to be a little bit open to changing some things that you think as sacrosanct, right? Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, last question.
Yeah, I want to ask that how we have so much information about our guests. Of course, we use it to set guest preferences for their future visits and in other hotels as well. But what do you do with so much information which we have about what they eat, how much they eat, which dishes they order, apart from that, what otherwise their preferences are in general, and if we need a platform which can, AI or anything, which can interpret that information into something more useful, and what's the way forward? What do you think on that front?
Sure. So look, I think maybe it's better to take this offline afterwards, but I think the one line I would say is hotels have more information on people than people themselves do actually, right? And you're absolutely right, that information is not well used, well structured today. There's a huge opportunity in using that information. In India, we don't have so many privacy laws. I think you probably can do that for a little longer. In the West, it's definitely very difficult to do it. And you've got to use that information very, very judiciously, right? But on a specific answer to your question, why don't we take that offline? I'll be outside, and then perhaps I can give you some ideas. Okay? Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.